Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Resident Evil Code Veronica X. In the last part, we went all over the place in the military training facility, getting ourselves the 3 proofs back as Chris. And now it's time for us to go get those into where they need to go and hopefully get ourselves the Eagle plate in the process. Now, getting the Eagle plate and using the proofs, you're gonna want some herbs with you, at least a double or a triple of some sort, but this is where Code Veronica gets a little weird with certain enemies. Additionally, after you've grabbed the proofs, some enemies have changed up or respawned in the military training facility. Namely, the hunters that were already spawned in have evolved, I guess. We'll see them the moment we get up here. They're now like purple and yellow instead of just the straight up green. These hunters you really want to stay away from because they can poison you with their physical attacks. It's not a guaranteed poison, but if you're at high health and you get hit once and you're starting to hold yourself, be careful because you have been poisoned. And because of the hunter's speed, they're kind of hard to avoid. I would recommend honestly using the submachine gun to take them out, but I just want to make sure I can save whatever ammo I can for right now. Again, you can be a little more liberal with your ammo usage than I am. If anything, this is more so just me being overly paranoid. Now, the trek to get back to the painting room can be a little weird, as it does vastly depend on what items you've grabbed thus far that you might want to go grab now. I personally find the fastest way to get there is to head back around to where we got the Glock 17 upgrade and take the elevator from there. But it could theoretically be faster to head back up to the second floor and all that. Theoretically is the keyword there. Resident Evil level design is weird in that the only games, at least for me, in that the only games I can actively remember basically the entire layout of when I'm not playing are Resident Evils 1, 2, Original 2, and 4. Because Remake 2 added enough new passageways and I'm like, huh? Where am I? What? Any other Resident Evil, I'm very forgetful on where I can go in some cases, unless I'm actively playing the game. Now, make sure you don't fill your inventory all the way before coming out towards this direction, though, as A, you're going to need at least one space for the Eagle plate, but also, there's a couple of herbs and a bit of ammo along the way that, since you're only going this way once anyway, you might as well grab it. You know, though, I gotta give the level designers credit in some form. They managed to use the painting room for, what is this, like the 4th or 5th different key hunt? Because we got the first Eagle plate here, we put the skull painting in here, we then got a key. We then came back here with the model tank to get a different key. We used it for the one Clement answer to get the temperature, and now we're using the 3 things in here. That's efficient use of design. But that said, kind of annoying all the same, because we really have to come back here a lot. It makes me wonder what kind of development this game went through behind the scenes to make them have so many rooms be used multiple times like this, but then other rooms are just completely forgotten about or optional. And like Resident Evil's always had its share of optional rooms, even if you're just going for like the worst ending. But something about the way they do it in this game just feels different. And it probably is because they had to design this game in full 3D rather than just having to do 2D assets for the backgrounds. So that probably changed up development a good bit. Be careful in this room, by the way. I think this is the last set of spiders in the game. I think is the key word. Well, technically. Now, I also recommend bringing along the Clement mixture with you, just so you can end up using it and the Eagle plate the moment you get it, just to help keep your inventory a little more efficient. But again, you're going to at least want to make sure you have at least a couple of spare spaces to grab the herbs along the way. Now, this next room is one of the first instances that's a little bit contentious in the Resident Evil community. I'll go more over why in a moment, because we do have a cutscene to start this next room off. That albinoid that escaped when Claire was first in the biochem lab has now fully grown and is in the water. With that said, it can never leave the water, so as long as you're on the ground, you're of no threat, and I think you can even shoot it from the ground. But whenever you're in the water, it's just a constant waiting hitbox. Either it can physically attack you or shock all the water you're in. But since the Eagle Plate is already spawned in and isn't like on top of the albinoid, you can just go into the water, take a hit or two, grab the Eagle Plate, and leave, not fighting the boss fight at all. You don't get anything from beating the boss fight outright, except for, I think, a minor cutscene of it dying. You can just ignore it. Some people don't like that. I don't mind it myself, as I think back, and I think even the original Resident Evil had bosses you could technically ignore, even if it got you a worse ending for doing so. Like, you could ignore the spider boss in the original Resident Evil, and you could ignore the yawn in most instances as well. So it's not really like it's a new thing, it's just it's the first time since the original game they did that, and I guess that's why it's a little bit iffy on whether or not people like that you can do that or not. Personally speaking, it saves me time, so I don't give a shit. Plus, fights like that are never really satisfying anyway, or more so they're very annoying, so I don't really see a point in fighting it. Saves me ammo. Probably would have been a good use of maybe some of my near end game handgun ammo, but oh well. Just take the hits and get out of there. It's just a wiser use of your time in my eyes. But now that we have the Eagle Plate and we combined it with the Clement mixture to get ourselves the Halberd, we can now head back towards the start of the military training facility and get the hell off of Rockport Island and towards Antarctica as Chris. It's weird, partially just because it's not the entire disc thanks to the Claire section at the start of disc 2, but the Chris scenario does kind of fly by in comparison because your visits in each area are truncated even if there is new content in both. And it makes me wish in some regard that this game played closer to Resident Evil 2 in how it handled its discs. Like, say each scenario was only maybe 2/3 as long in some cases, at least, so the Claire section's a little shorter. But there's more happening in it, so that the pace feels better. It would make the size of this game feel more forgiving if each campaign was only 3 hours long and you got rated at the end of each. I'm not saying you should be able to, like, play the Chris scenario before the Claire scenario, or even do a Leon A, Claire B sort of scenario like you could in Resident Evil 2. More so you can only play Disc 2 after Disc 1, but after that you can play them in whatever order you want. Like, alright, I want to play Code Veronica, I'll play the Claire half, and then leave it off at that, have a more climactic duel with Nosferatu at the end, maybe. But it's not what we ended up getting, so oh well.
Hold on, Claire. I'll save you.
Welcome back to Antarctica. It's almost weird. You kind of arrive here with all that fanfare and the music, but when you initially arrive in Antarctica as Chris, there's not really much happening. Partially because you just need to figure out your way around. With that said, we do have tentacles now that Alexia is awake, but they just take a couple of handgun bullets to take down. The biggest difference is now it's snowing in here. I guess because the plane, for one thing, went through there a little bit, but also because the tentacle erupted from the ceiling of this place in that cutscene at the end of the Claire scenario. Now, just because we're back in Antarctica, that doesn't mean everything here is going to be the same as it was on the first visit with Claire, just like in Rockport Island as Chris. For instance, during the cutscene when we were leaving in the machine before the Nosferatu fight, a bunch of rooms got flooded, and now that it's snowing in here, that shit has frozen up. So there's a couple of rooms that you can't access the same way as you could before, because there's just water blocking that entire section of the area. Also, the moths are gone. I guess they can handle the cold. So in that regard, I guess at least Antarctica has a few less poison enemies, but there's also going to be some poison hunters here later on. More on that later. But now that we have the halberd, we can also use it on this imprint here in the office. It actually took me a while to figure out you could do this in my first playthrough just because it didn't register to me that I could interact with this. I don't know why. I just thought it was background spice. And that opens up this compartment, giving us some ink ribbons, the paperweight, and a file. Alfred's diary. January 30th. There's a sealed room in the hallway located inside the Antarctic facility. I don't know what's hidden there, but I do know how to get in. I can use the 3 jewels that each of our 3 family members wear as proof of being a legitimate descendant of the Ashford family. The only problem is, I do not know how I can gain possession of my father's proof. February 17th. I finally succeeded in entering that sealed room. I never could have imagined that such an insane secret existed regarding the birth of both Alexia and myself. I hate my father. That fool Alexander. Now it's obvious that we were merely created in an attempt to cover my father's blunder. I can never trust him again. I must regain the glory of the Ashford family with my sister. I have nothing to be afraid of, as long as Alexia is with me. March 3rd. Alexia carried out the experiment on the human body that we've been talking about. Our useless father must be happy now, since he can finally contribute to the Ashford family. The only thing we should be careful about is that the butler, Harmon, does not become wise to our activities. April 22nd. The experiment resulted in failure. Our father was useless after all. Even worse, he turned into a dangerous monster that is completely out of control. We tied him down and locked him up in an underground prison cell. However, Alexia seems to be close to a solution. Beyond all my expectations, she now says that she wishes to conduct the experiment on her own body. On top of that, she feels she must be kept asleep for 15 years in order to accomplish the experiment. Thanks to that idiot, I can't see my dear Alexia for as long as 15 years. Alexia is going to sleep, with all of her trust relying upon me. Now, I'm the only one who can protect Alexia. And that reveals that Nosferatu was actually Alexander. Little messed up, but I expect that out of Resident Evil. If anything, the Ashford family might be the most messed up family in the series, though. Outside of the Redfields going through all this so quickly, even. Because this is still only, I think, like 6 months after the original Resident Evil, somewhere in that range. I forget the exact range of events so far. I think it's been in less than a year all the same. But now that we have the paperweight, we can do something a little bit later on in Antarctica. The big thing we want to do now, though, is actually grab the empty extinguisher that we've had in the item box since part 2, if memory serves. If not, late part 1. Because it's time to finally fill that thing back up. If you got rid of this thing or left it behind at, like, the item storage box, the metal detectors on Rockport Island as Claire, you're gonna regret it. Because it is surprisingly important. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 14, we're gonna go further exploring the Antarctic base as Chris, hopefully finding any kind of progress in the process. See you guys then.